What's popular, YouTube? Another day, another demo. Today we are here to watch a player improve live right before your eyes. This is watching Farley, who I threw out some slander at him in the Nikados demo from last week. Of course, he was just a side topic of that demo, and it was mostly highlighting and discussing and revering the Nikados play that we saw in Ancient. But of course, I curse players. Every single time I make a demo and I say something negative about someone, they start playing well. Now, it doesn't take away from the fact that in the grand scheme of things, Farley, of course, has yet to kind of consistently get his op play up to snuff. But what we did watch at Pro League, which was cool, is him having his best event so far. And even though they didn't survive the groups, I think it wasn't Farley's fault. And I thought it would be interesting. So I actually didn't even come into this wanting to make a video out of it. I just wanted to watch his games and see what was going on. And I thought I was going to confirm what I had suspected when I was casting. Because when I was casting at the Blast Fall groups, I was very disappointed. I was like, oh, this, we're getting some lazy picks, vanilla style opping. We're not getting that Farley with that flair that we got on FPX. I'm not a fan. I just don't think he's good enough. And instead, what I found was I thought that actually there were some rounds where maybe Astralis and Farley were not on the same page, but I thought that Farley was in the better position than Astralis were. And actually, the pacing and the spacing were kind of letting Farley down. And when we see Farley, what we're going to watch in this, by the way, is one game with 3 rounds where I felt like he didn't play well in a game that they lost, and another game where he did play well and they got a lot of kills and then they won the match. Let's hop in and watch Farley play a bad game and then a good game and see what the difference is with him on Astralis. Hope you enjoy it. Farley's best event yet. So, okay, the first thing I noticed when I was watching Farley's games, I picked something that was kind of consistent where he made an improvement, and I wanted to contrast him playing in some of the past matches where, again, the macro stats analysis, Farley's not performing well enough for an opper, versus Pro League, where recently he's clearly gotten a lot better. And I think recency is very important because we don't know what the future is going to be like, but at least it's not like he fell off from somewhere. He just overall wasn't that good. But when we look at Farley in a situation where he's actually kind of playing well, I think the most striking difference actually was the fact that his team was scaling really well with him. And I think that when Farley looked bad, it was when he didn't have this phalanx of teammates when he was setting up op kills. And I thought this was a great example of a situation where he does have that support. And of course, we know Farley has the aim, and we actually know that he's known to be a little bit more aggressive. And with a kill like that, you see a good example of kind of what Farley can do. He can pull off a really strong pre-aim. He can be aggressive when it's needed. And with teammates around him, he can make a play that would otherwise look passive actually be very impactful. And I think Astralis at their worst, which we'll take a look at after, is an Astralis where Farley doesn't have the confidence to make that move, or doesn't have the amount of support around him in the form of a fake exec or multiple teammates pushing out at the same time to bait any kind of pick out of his opponents. So why don't we move on to the next example? So the next example is right away in this next round. And I think this is pretty cool because it shows both Farley kind of going for a default where Astralis are spreading out a Mirage and holding for picks. And I think actually this is still a problem with Astralis where sometimes they sit and wait. And right now they're covering all positions in their default and passively holding mid instead of playing 3 in towards mid, 1 to B, going underpass, and then either picking A ramp or pals to hold. They're covering all options. The drawback of a passive default like this is unless the other team makes an aggressive move, you don't have any map progress, right? You've held all the most normal positions. You have to go and take something afterwards. So there will be a point in which you have to speed up. And at this point of the round, it's like, okay, you do this normally when you think it's an anti-eco, I think, or you have no idea what they're going to try to do, and you think they might pull out an aggressive option. So here's a situation where we organize, we're at the minute mark, we're setting up for a B split, at least seemingly. I actually don't even remember how this round ends. But now we're starting to scale up towards Cat. We have the smoke down at the bottom of connector, and we're seeing the tether again between Config and Farley, and him being very close to his teammates here. And they're doing a good job of turning the corner here on Cat, which I talk about so much. Farley hits a great shot. Again, scaling with his teammates to draw attention away from him. And then 2 of his teammates die in the site, but they have successfully kind of scaled towards B. And at the 30-second mark, even though it's not a really nice position, Farley absolutely does the job here with his entry. And the final example of where I think Farley is joining with his team and making it look good. And don't worry, stick around, because I think alone, you're looking at a 1K, and in this last round, you're looking at a kind of explosive maneuver up A. But I'll pull up the stats and show he had a great half. And then again, I want to contrast that with some of the plays where I feel like that energy wasn't there, and then he didn't have a good half, and then they didn't win the map. So this is the final example. It's actually kind of a small one, and this is Farley simply going in for a pick and underpass. And again, this is one where his teammates are doing a bit of work here to try to draw aggro out of his opponents. Now, this is the following round. So if we look at what we just saw in terms of conditioning, right, a lot of the map was given up to ENCE on that last round. So Senpai is peeking up in an underpass. It could have come out of restlessness. And the fact that there was no pressure whatsoever. Farley was holding Palace that last round. Now he's here with an op and underpass in this passive default waiting for the move. And they get the move that they're looking for. So what's the big draw here? We got this 1K and underpass. We've reorganized. And it looks like we're about to repeat a similar round. I mean, we still have the bottom con smoke, which again can be used as a great smoke to trick your opponents because it can help you scale up cat and help you get connector control or take the A site. So that's what we're seeing. This is a very Glaive style call to do something like this, where they're actually now taking it to the other side with very similar nades. Of course, that's just commonplace now, but this is something Glaive got really famous for mastering, I would say, from the conditioning perspective. But what have we got? We got this 1 kill, right, inside of mid. They take out the opper, they take out one player, and they take out the mid player. All these things, right? A 5v4 advantage, mid control, and the opper. These are huge. And then from there, or we hit the minute mark, I should say, and then we take over the A site. So what we just saw there was something as simple as Farley being in the right place at the right time, maybe off of a good call. You know, maybe that was just Glaive putting him in a position where the idea was that, no, ENCE are going to try this general thing, and we might get a chance for it, and he gets the kill. We saw that that was just massive because of the player that he killed, in the position that he killed, and the fact that it was such an early 5v4 advantage. That can be the hardest part. It can be the hardest thing to just get that first frag. And now that we see them consistently do it, we see Farley have consistent results, and we see Astralis also have consistent results to follow. And that is the whole reason that we're critical of oppers that have low ratings, because they're the guys who are wielding the most expensive and powerful gun in the game. And whether or not you want to put blame on them or the team, it's clear as day. If an opper is not performing at a very high rating in contrast to their riflers, it doesn't make sense for them to be opping. That's just the long and short of it. So now we'll look at Farley in a previous match where he's going to be playing in positions where I actually thought it was interesting because it wasn't entirely his fault, and there might have been a discrepancy between his philosophy as a T-side opper, his team in terms of their pacing, but similar rounds to this that don't go as well. Let's take a look. All right, so with those last rounds fresh in my memory, and pardon the bumpiness if I don't get this flow exactly right, maybe it would be cool to kind of intersplice the round side by side, but let's take a look at another round where Astralis is a unit and Farley as the opper will try to scale cat, and we saw this happen more successfully in that previous demo, even though that one's newer. So this one's from the Blastfall groups. Here is already a little bit of an awkward start. Valve, please fix that bump on the ledge that we just watched. And Farley is going to be here in this default. There's clearly a lot of intention. Instead of going for a default where they're holding all positions like we saw in that previous demo, this one versus OG, and that one was versus ENCE. Here, it's a little bit more aggressive towards mid, but it's also a bit of a fake, right? It's them hiding in all of these different spots, ready to punish any cat aggression, ready to punish any late connector peek from Dagster, holding top boxes on mid, and really forcing some kind of reaction somewhere from OG that may or may not come. So where do they go from here? Well, after seeing absolutely nothing in this spot, they're still left with mid control, which is a pretty big win. But now, with around that minute mark passing, and we saw this happen in that previous game, Farley is starting to organize up towards cat. But Farley's starting to organize up towards cat by himself here. So they scale take over this control of connector. They get the smoke down bottom con, or top con, I should say. And Farley, right now in this position, we saw last time, it was Config who turned the corner and he got the kill over towards B-apps, and his teammates were up in the B-apps ready to exec, right? That was the big thing. So it's Farley with some support here and that going on. In this position, Farley has a smoke that's expiring, which is causing anxiety, of course. That's how it always is when you're in this spot. because you have to decide if you guys are going to go towards B and commit, or if you're going to get into ladder room. But if you get into ladder room in this position, you can't simply come back out and go around the corner. You're always exposed to connector. So there's this 15-second window where your smoke is down, and Farley has some safety and has the ability to try to get into B. At the 45-second mark, we've got 3 players who still haven't decided where they want to end up, right? So there's clearly a bit of dysfunction going on here. And so you could even say that Farley in this position is in the much better spot. It makes sense. 40 seconds, they got their trade and connector. They should be trying to hit the B site, and they have cat control. Does that mean it is his teammates' fault? Maybe and maybe not, right? Because it could be the case that the call wasn't to do anything like this. It wasn't to scale up cat in the first place. That's the part that we won't know. But from my perspective, it doesn't feel like it is Farley's fault. So, okay, let's take a look at this next round, where we can also contrast to one of the previous ones where there'll be an A-ramp play. All right, so here's one of the final rounds of the half. Farley has picked up in AWP again, and again, we'll actually contrast to a round where Farley in the bad demo, if we'll call it, kind of went for an A-ramp play, and all throughout this half, he was spending a lot of time sitting here and waiting for something to happen. So what's the issue with this? Well, this is when people start calling Farley passive. People don't know FPX Farley, and they just watch Astralis Farley, then they might just think he's just a passive opper, but that's not who I remember him as. Now, I'd have to make sure that I don't, it's not the Mandela effect, and I go back and watch those demos. I remember correctly that he was actually pretty explosive, but that's what my mind is telling me right now. And so here's Farley in this position, over top of the A ramp, one flash to kind of set him up to search the site, but nothing from this position. He'll sit, he'll wait, and after they've thrown this flash, this lamp flash to help him take that first peek, they start to get a little bit nervous and want to know what's going on. So what happens? He sits there, fully scoped in, cyclopsed up, gets flashed, and gets taken out because they were suspicious when they threw their nade. They were suspicious when they heard the flash. They're suspicious because there's no pressure on the other parts of the map. There's one guy getting into connector, but that only raises suspicions towards A ramp. And then what happens? He gets flashed and he dies, and his teammate's not there to help him. So, a far cry from the team that had the exact same level of map control, but turned it into a full site exec in a previous round. And in this one, we're playing 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out. So in our final example, we're going to take a look at actually something funny. I noticed that Astralis, they like to end Mirage halves, T halves with B execs. I don't know if that's going to continue to happen or if it goes selectively in the demos that I watched, but we're going to have Farley throw get right smoke here, help scale towards the site. Now, I think there's already a huge flaw in this attack, and that's Farley having the bomb. So I don't know why this is happening. Now, I think ever since like 2016, I would say, like, Fallen would constantly carry the bomb on his back as an opper, and that always worked because the op is really strong in the post plant, but not necessarily always that useful in taking the site. So it can be something where you want to have that guy planting because he's not that useful as the bomb is getting planted in the first place. If flashes come through, people flash the smoke, all that stuff. So that makes sense. But in this position, when you're execing the B site as a T side team, you take this op, right? And you come up through the halls. Your teammates will either get out of the window or scale towards van, and your job is to sit in the window and op here to cut this off entirely, right? We're not even having market window smoked in this exec, I don't think. So Farley is going to be trying to hold this line, but he's holding this line with a bomb. So it's going to cause some awkwardness. And I'm not sure if this one is by design. I actually don't know why he would hold the bomb on this specific style of exec, but this is not even... This is like a perfectly normal thing to do as an opper when you're trying to hold. So Fico dies to Farley with this op, and Farley gets out onto the site. But look what immediately happens, right? He's holding this bomb and he's holding the flank. He would have been in a much more prime position to not only hold off of Cat from the market window, hold the market window after the smoke does come up, or hold the flank where Flames is coming in. And all these points of pressure have to be dealt with, and they constantly are appearing to want to let the op have to deal with it. But meanwhile, his teammates are dying around him. This nade comes his way. Nexa gets another kill, and all of a sudden, it's Farley in a position where there's no way he can plant, and Dexter is the one who would have died if he had held the cross. So a very awkward situation where it looks like Farley's lost and confused, and I think that that's a consistent theme in rounds where he's not playing well. I came in expecting to confirm what I already thought when I was casting, that Farley would come out kind of lazily onto fights and then look for an aggressive odd pick, do nothing afterwards, and then the team would lose the round and didn't really have layers or protocols to his game plan. And instead, kind of what I found was when we saw Farley was playing well, there was actually just a better design around his play. I think it's kind of like surface level, 30% deep analysis about Farley based on a few rounds here. But I thought this was interesting, so I wanted to share it. And I think this is just a cool comparison demo that I want to try to do more of in the future. So if you enjoyed that, let me know what your conclusion is, and if you thought anything interesting watching these games, and if you have any feedback about how they should be structured. Thanks for watching, and as always, be safe.